Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Becky, and we're parents to two little kids. Parenting isn't always easy. There are ups and downs, good days and bad days, days with way too much TV, and days with lots of laughter. Moments where you just feel overwhelmed, and moments where you've never felt more proud.
At the end of the day, parenting is super rewarding, but also super hard. This podcast is for all the parents out there who feel like they have no idea what they're doing, because we're right there with you. This is the Spillproof podcast.
Welcome back to the Spillproof podcast, everyone. Today, we are going to be talking about bottle, breast, and SNS. Basically, how we fed and are feeding our kids.
And formula.
Well, that's included with bottle.
Just wanted to be clear on that. We support bottle, breast, SNS, and formula.
Correct. We do not care how you feed your children as long as you feed your children.
Correct. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yes, there is no wrong way to feed them as long as you're feeding them.
Correct.
Yes. Formula's cool. Breastfeeding is cool.
Bottle's awesome.
Bottle's cool. SNS, if you like to do that, more power to you. You're probably an Amazon woman.
Sorry,
Yeah.
you said that and all I was thinking was shopping on Amazon.
I started to think of Wonder Woman.
Amazonian?
Oh, that's right. Yes, she's an Amazonian.
Okay. Because you said that, and again, I just thought shopping on Amazon?
And I
Because
thought
that's
of-
everybody.
Yeah, Wonder Woman. I meant you're basically Wonder Woman.
There you go.
All right, yeah, so today we're going to talk about our experiences with the feeding via bottle, breast, and SNS. We're going to bring you guys through just kind of overall what our experience is like with our first kid, Owen, what it's been like with our daughter, Emily, so far, and then we're going to kind of compare and contrast and look at some benefits and drawbacks, pros and cons of each.
Yeah, we have two kids, and everything that you read in the textbook, we've essentially gone through mostly.
Yeah, we've tried a lot of different things with both kids. So let's start with Owen. Right after he was born, when we were in the recovery room, they were like, do you want to try breastfeeding? And I was like, yeah, let's go for it.
You really wanted to do breastfeeding.
I did. I really wanted to breastfeed, and I also thought it would come naturally, and there would be no issues.
Like breathing.
Yeah, we did not sign up for a breastfeeding class because I was so convinced that it was just going to be easy and everyone can do this and it's a fundamental thing you're supposed to be able to do as a woman, and what a joke. It's so hard and it doesn't always come easy, and that's okay.
It was first kid thoughts.
Yes. First kid thoughts for sure. So I was like, yeah, pop him on there. Let's feed him. And at the time, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going so well. He's latching right away. But in reality, it did take them a while to get him to latch, and they put a nipple shield on. So in the moment, I was like, yes, it's working. We're using a nipple shield, but it's fine. It's not a big deal. Little did we know. It would be like the last time I would.
It was the first and last.
Yeah, that I would really breastfeed it. So after that, when we were back in the room we would be in for the next couple days, every time I tried to breastfeed him, Owen literally pushed his head away from me so aggressively.
He had incredible neck strength from birth.
Yeah, it was absurd how strong his neck was. And we had a lot of opinions in the hospital after that. We had lactation consultants coming in, nurses giving us advice, the doctors coming in giving us advice.
Everybody was pushing towards making breastfeeding work.
Yes, which, I mean, lactation consultants, that's their job, is
They have
to
an
help
agenda.
you with that.
They have an agenda.
We're going to have some very strong opinions about lactation consultants. If you are a lactation consultant, this is not an attack against you. This is our singular experience and opinion, and how we felt in the moment after a very long birth with some complications. So we were first-time parents, some hiccups during the birth.
We walked into it thinking that we were prepared.
Yeah, we were not.
And we were not prepared by a long shot with everything that happened. And again, we'll get into that at some point in another podcast, because that could take up 2 podcast episodes in their entirety.
About specifically the births, yeah.
Yeah, but it we didn't realize what we were getting ourselves into, and we, coming out of everything that had happened, we just weren't expecting all these struggles to have happened.
Yeah, and I think we were just exhausted and really raw and emotional. And like I said, I thought breastfeeding was going to be super easy and come very natural, and it didn't. Like, Owen literally pushed his head as far away as possible. So, like, immediately out of the gate, I was like, he doesn't like me. He doesn't want to eat from my breast.
And the nurses and lactation consultants all were pretty shocked about his ability to pull his head away from the nipple.
Yes, but they were giving me a lot of different tips and tricks for how we could get him to latch. Sometimes it worked with a nurse helping or a lactation consultant helping, but then it was like the second they left the room, he would pop off. So basically the first 3 days were us struggling to feed him.
We fed him with a syringe, I think.
Yeah, we fed him with a syringe. We fed him formula from a bottle. I pumped milk and we fed him.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the second day, or maybe even that first night, like our first full night, one of the lactation consultants was like, why don't you try SNS? Which
those are infamous words.
Was my downfall.
I loved it.
Dave loved it. I'm 100% sure it triggered postpartum depression for me.
No,
I would bet money that it triggered my postpartum depression.
I'm sure it did. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. You did. We'll talk more about that.
Mm-hmm.
But for those of you who don't know what SNS is, it stands for, and I had to look this up because I didn't remember, but it stands for Supplemental Nursing System. And essentially what that is, I'm trying to even think of how to describe what this is.
Do you want me to?
Yes, you describe it.
All right. So it's a small, I think it was a 10 ml bottle. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it was a little bottle.
So it was a 10 ml bottle with a nipple, the normal nipple that you'd see. But instead of it being with a hole at the top, there was a 6 to 7 inch tube coming off of it with a clamp on it.
Like a really tiny tube where like a catheter tube.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And that would come down and go into a nipple shield on the nipple itself.
Yeah. So this little tube fed underneath the nipple shield that was like suctioned to my boob.
Yeah, well, and we had to tape the lines on you.
Yeah, we had to clamp the bottle upside down on my shoulder and then tape the line, the little catheter line from my shoulder so gravity could help the milk go down.
Mm-hmm.
And then Owen would like eat off of the nipple shield. And the idea is he was getting milk, breast milk, because I had pumped breast milk. He was getting breast milk, but also still stimulating my breast so that the milk would come out so that I wouldn't stop producing. And then eventually like we could take the nipple shield off and he would just latch and it would be all hunky-dory. But in reality, what happens is every 2 to 3 hours, you are setting up this contraption on your shoulder with the nipple shield, with the catheter running underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
You're holding your son to it, your newborn son, who you are trying to bond with, and you're so frazzled as to like being a new mom. You're trying to get them to latch onto that. Meanwhile, the nipple shield is pulling off, so milk is going everywhere. So you have to
It would fall off maybe 2 or 3 times every feeding.
Minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Like on a good feeding, it would fall off 2 to 3 times. So then you have to dry yourself off, put it back on. And then after that, supplement him with either pumped breast milk in a bottle or formula in a bottle just to make sure that he got enough. And then throw all of that in a bin with soap and warm soap and water. And then pump to make sure that, you're getting all the colostrum and all the good stuff for him and that you have something for the next time you have to feed him. And then by the time you get all that done and you change your poopy diapers and you maybe grab a bite to eat, it's time to do it all again.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what SNS high level is like. So we'll go more into the pros and cons of that later. But
we'll touch on that later.
Kind of like our introduction to feeding our child was the supplemental nursing system, also known as SNS.
Mm-hmm. And we should probably mention, he never did latch.
No.
We did bottles right after we stopped doing that.
He never really latched. Randomly at 3 months, he latched, and I would try to nurse him once a day just for kicks, but that really only lasted like 2 months.
And by that point, we had reached a rhythm and a very timed, eats at this time, eats this much ounces, eats it within 10 minutes or so, and then kind of moved on. So the feeding off the breast was really foreign at that point. It kind of threw everything off. He'd overeat. That was a whole nother problem.
Yeah, so we did not. Well, he did latch a couple, like for a little bit, like for 2 months off and on. I would like be like, oh, let's try and see if you are going to latch today and eat a little bit. But ultimately I decided we were kind of in our routine, and I didn't want to go backwards and try to like figure it out again because we were already in our groove. So we continued SNS probably for a solid week or two after he was born. Ultimately, we decided to stop because it was affecting my ability to bond with him and my mental health, to be quite honest. And then we decided we were going to pump, or I was going to pump, and we were going to bottle feed. So I started pumping 8 times a day, and we bottle fed him. And we'll go into the pros and cons of that too. But yeah, we were exclusive pumpers.
And you pumped enough to where we had to get an extra freezer.
Yeah, we bought a huge
chest freezer because I was an overproducer. I was pumping 50 to 60 ounces a day, and he was only drinking anywhere between like 25 to 30 ounces a day. So we literally filled an entire chest freezer with milk. It was crazy.
It was nuts. Yeah. I stopped pumping at 6 months, again, for my mental health. But we had some sort of frozen milk available to him until he was about 10 months. Some bottles would be like in there during the day. Some bottles would be formula, and some bottles would be the frozen milk. But he got some sort of breast milk until he was 10 months old because of how much I pumped. It was nuts. And it was the longest 6 months of my life pumping for him.
You did not love pumping.
I didn't. I had little goals for myself. So every time I hit a goal, like pumping till I went back to work, and then I would buy myself a little present, or, you know, making it to 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, I would buy myself a little present when I hit those.
And that seemed to
milestones. Yeah, I still hated it though. Yeah, so that was our kind of high-level experience with Owen. So when we got pregnant again, we went into it like, we're going to try to breastfeed, but if I have to pump, I have to pump. And
we knew what to expect at the point if it didn't work.
If I have to be an exclusive pumper again, I'm only going to do it for 6 months again. And I had made like a deal with myself that I was going to try to not be an overproducer because it was just really hard, that much pumping all day, every day. So
plus we don't have the storage anymore because the freezer broke.
Yeah. So I was like, you know, I'm not going to worry about producing enough to get her to 10 months. I was just going to be like, as long as I can produce enough to give her something every day, even if we have to supplement with formula a little bit, that was my goal. But I was hoping that we could breastfeed, but I had no expectations. I was like, we'll just see what happens. And if I have to pump, I have to pump. And if we get a month or 2 into it and it's affecting my mental health, we'll just formula feed. And that was how we both went into it.
100%. And by chance, it happened.
Em breastfeeds beautifully.
She latched immediately.
She latched right away.
Had a very strong latch.
Yes, I knew right away it was different. But yeah, her latch was so much better. And I think I remember, like, I distinctly remember looking over at you and going, she's going to do it. She's going to breastfeed. We got this. And she was great throughout our whole time in the hospital. Like I said, with Owen, we had several lactation consultants come in throughout our hospital stay. We had one come in the second time, and we had decided we were basically going to, before we went to the hospital, we had decided together we were going to like respectfully decline that they assist, just because we had had a not so great experience in the past.
They almost dropped our baby.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
She tripped and almost dropped our newborn.
She did. I forgot about that. Oh my gosh, I think I blocked it out because it was horrible.
She played it off like it was no big deal, but she tripped and our baby nearly left her arms.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, there were other things.
There were other things.
That didn't sit
just like
great.
the emotional aspect. And with Owen, one time that like after they came in, I burst into tears because I just felt like I was a failure because I couldn't breastfeed. Anyways, we were going to respectfully decline. So they came in and I happened to be breastfeeding Emily at the time. And they were like, oh, how's it going? You look like a pro, like you've done this before. And I was like, nope, pumped exclusively with my first son. We're just winging it, but we're good. And so she had asked a couple other questions, and I think she got that we were like, we're good.
Yeah, I remember it being a little bit awkward, kind of like when someone tries to initiate a conversation with you, you're like, yep, yep.
Yeah, and I'm really good at shutting down conversations with my awkwardness. So I shut it down real hard with my awkwardness, and she was like, I'm going to skedaddle out of here. So Emily is almost 8 months. We're still breastfeeding. I'm ready to wean. It's been a
different experience.
We'll talk about it more, but I think at this point I'm ready to start weaning. I've gone for like the last month. I've gone back and forth about it, about like, oh, I should just keep going. And then other times I'm like, I don't know if I really want to do it anymore. I keep like desperately searching her mouth for a tooth so I can use that as an excuse to be like, I don't want to get bit. We're done.
Well, and I think it's worth mentioning that she hasn't up until recently taken a bottle very well.
Correct. Yeah, we had varying stages of working with her to take a bottle. Like we were really dedicated to get her to take a bottle, and then we kind of gave up and we're like, I guess it's just not going to happen. And then we got back on that train when she got back into daycare, and we were like, all right, we're really going to work with her. So she takes a bottle great from us, from me, from Dave, from our moms. She still gives daycare a little bit of trouble.
Daycare doesn't do it the right way is the problem.
Well, yeah, they can't heat the water up as hot.
She likes to feed herself.
And she likes to feed herself, yeah.
They try to feed her, and I think that's part of the problem. Because she crushed 5 ounces today by herself.
But we also like left her on the floor to feed herself, and they can't really do that at daycare. They can't just leave her on the floor to feed herself.
True. And
their water only gets to a certain temperature.
And our bottle was pretty warm.
Yeah, our bottle was pretty warm today. So, there's just certain, and of course she's in her own home. She's probably more comfortable than in daycare. She only goes 2 days a week. So when they can't feed her the bottle or she refuses, they mix it in with oatmeal and get it to her that way. And she loves solids. So I think she's just like, I'll just wait for the solids.
She might intentionally be doing it.
A little bit. I know they say babies like don't have intent like that, but I just think she really likes solids. So she's like, I'll just wait until you mix it in with my oatmeal or peas or carrots.
I could see that.
But she gets her the volume that she needs. It's just in a different way. So that is
our experiences.
Our experience, yeah, super high level. And now we're going to talk which one was our favorite, which one we didn't like. I think you guys know which one I didn't like. The
issues with both, because there's definitely pros and cons for both of them, and I think the jury's still out on which one is the better one. I don't know that there is.
I have a theory that I wrote down.
All right. Well, I'm excited.
An opinion, yes.
I'm excited to hear your theory. Obviously, we've got some notes written down here, so we'll go over those too.
Cool.
All right. What do you want to dive in first? You've got more notes than I do.
Let's start with SNS because that was kind of our first.
Together?
Yeah, like that's the option that we really tried first with Owen.
Yeah. SNS is not meant to be sustainable. The way that it's built, it's meant to be a bridge between your baby not latching and breastfeeding. I think that's probably important to know, despite me being okay with probably doing it forever.
Yeah, that's what I wrote down too. I said it'll get you over the hump to breastfeeding.
Unless your child has the neck strength of an alligator and just won't do it.
Unless your child is our son, who literally was like, nope, I'm not going to do it.
You have to understand, our son was born with abs of steel, a 6-pack, and a neck that was just as strong. So he could full force one hand it was almost impossible to hold him up to the breast while trying to get him to breastfeed. And he sat up himself at
3.5 months.
At 3.5 months.
Abs of steel, man.
And as soon as we brought him home, I want to say within the first month, he did this thing where he would hover. He'd always hover.
Yeah, when like you held him to your chest, he always wanted to like look at you or like look over your shoulder, so he would hover. And
he'd put his arms out and he would just
like he was flying
use his
like
core.
A bird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he had this like core strength going from his core to his neck that just was unprecedented for any baby I've ever seen.
And it felt wrong to like push him back so hard because you really had to put a lot of effort. Like as he was pushing away, you had like I really had to use my strength to like keep him there, and that felt wrong with such a tiny baby.
It was like arm wrestling somebody.
Yeah, like at that point we just had to be like,
and
he doesn't want to do this.
Like a month old.
Yeah, like we could hurt him if we keep, like if we keep trying to like force him back.
In reality, he was probably just getting a workout.
Yeah, he was just messing with us. I said there were no benefits to SNS, but then I said, just kidding. There's no benefits for me. But like I said, it could get someone over that hump. So for other people, it might work for you to get to that point where maybe your baby just needs to like get a little bit better suck or like figure out how their mouth works. I don't know. So it could work for you.
Yeah, you just wanted to throw it in the bin and
it made
light
me
it on fire.
It
made you feel inadequate.
Very inadequate and inferior at a time when like
you're vulnerable.
You're really, really vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And like not just in the sense like you just had a baby, you're exhausted, you're a first-time parent, so you thought you knew what you had to do, and then you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. But also like your body is just like exposed to the max. And I'm like typically not someone like I'm more modest in the way that I dress probably. I go for comfort over everything, especially in pandemic. But even before then, I was more of like I wanted to dress up and look nice, but I also wanted to be comfortable. And then you get to the hospital and you're just like, and you don't care in the moment because you just want your baby to be okay and
you're in a lot of pain.
To not be in pain. Yeah. So you're focused on other things, but then, like, to be honest, whipping your boob out to 1,000 different strangers who are coming in and out, giving you advice on how you should use those boobs or not use those boobs or how to squeeze them or not squeeze them. Like, you're really, really vulnerable. And then that made me feel like I needed some crazy contraption to even feed my kid. So, like I said, it triggered my postpartum depression.
I enjoyed it.
You did.
I enjoyed it. And we were going through a lot of emotions, so I wasn't trying to be insensitive to Becky's feelings or what she was going through. I, at the time, was thinking we were all on the same page. Clearly, we're a little bit off on that kind of stuff, but I really enjoyed it. It made me feel like I was a part of the feeding, and as the dad, you're really kind of left out of all of the process of this. The birthing process, that is, and the feeding too, for the most part. And that gave me an opportunity to be a part of it. So, setting it up, filling it up, cleaning it, making sure the formula was in there or whatever it might be. And I did a lot of the feeding too with the syringe with Owen. I remember doing a lot of that. And there were little bottles too we were feeding him too.
Yeah.
So we were putting the nipples on the 10 ml bottles and feeding them that way too. But as the dad, you're a little removed from everything. I want to say you're more of a bystander, other than helping keep everybody calm and being there for moral support and rubbing things that need to be rubbed because they hurt. But the SNS for me, it was a lot because obviously we were all getting the same amount of sleep because you can't really do shifts when you're doing something like that.
Yeah.
So you're both always awake. You're both trying to be asleep at the same time, obviously with comfort and babies crying and washing and things like that. There's very little time in between. 3 hours comes quick when a baby feeds for 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Plus you got to clean, plus you got to do all this other stuff, plus you got to pump, which takes another 15 minutes, call it, maybe 20.
Yeah, at least 15 to 20 minutes.
So it all just kind of compiles, and you've got maybe 20 to 30 minutes before you can jump back into the routine. It's a little crazy, and it's really nice that we had 3 days in the hospital. Honestly, we needed all 3 of those days, and when we were ejected, it was a little scary.
It felt like an ejection.
It did.
You were like, get out. But we were like, can we stay a little longer?
So I really liked the SNS. Like I said, looking back on it now, I don't think it's sustainable to continue to do that, nor is there any reason to do that with bottles and working on breastfeeding. We were at a disadvantage. As Becky said, we had some complications. But the main complication for the SNS and the bottle and the latch and all that, Owen had a shallow latch, which was contributed to having tongue tie.
Well, the some people said he had a tongue tie and some said it was just fine.
Mm-hmm.
So that was hard too, because, you know, in the hospital, they were like, some of the people who came to talk to us were like, yeah, he has a tongue tie. You should get it snipped while you're here.
Mm-hmm.
Like nip that in the bud right away. But then other people would come in and we would be like, can you take a look? Because this person said that he had a tongue tie.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, you know what? Maybe a little bit, but it really seems fine. And other people were like, no, I don't think he has one at all. He did have a shallow latch.
Mm-hmm. And that was what they were explaining it by, is saying that the shallow latch was because of the tongue tie that was there. The varying degrees of how bad the tongue tie was, again, it was a 50-50 split with people saying that we should do something about it, we shouldn't do about it. Again, these people are medical people, not just friends and family that are
it was all
it.
Medical professionals who were saying, yes, he has one, no, he doesn't have one. Some saying do it now to clip it, others saying wait a little
Some people
bit.
said it'll just rip on its own and he'll be fine.
Yeah, and then one of the nurses who we really liked was like, they said all 3 of my kids had it, and I never got it clipped, and they were fine. So it was hard to know what to do in that moment, because you're like, well, I don't want to do this if, you know, he doesn't need it.
Mm-hmm.
The excessive Googling started, which, if you are a new parent,
Google is not your friend.
It's not your friend. Go to your pediatrician. Ask a doctor. And I know I just said in this case, different medical professionals were giving us different advice, but just talk to your pediatrician. When I talked to my pediatrician about how much I was Googling and how much I was seeking information on like Facebook sites or groups or mom groups, he was like, go to those for like toys or nothing medical related, because he said it can actually be really dangerous if you take medical advice from obviously people who are not medical professionals, because they could tell you something that could potentially be harmful to your kid in the end. So he was like, if you have a question or a concern, just come to me, send us a message, call in, bring him in if you feel more comfortable, but like stay off of those. So I remember having to tell Dave and my mom, I think even my sister at one point, like, you have to keep checking to make sure I'm not on these because I can't control myself at this point. So I need you guys to keep me in check. Anyways, where were we after I got on my soapbox about just not getting sucked into those groups? But you did feel very involved. And I do remember you in the hospital and even at home, you would be like, just sit up. I will get everything ready. Like you hooked it onto my shirt or my like nursing bra. You taped it onto me. You got everything set up. You brought Owen over to me. You handled all the bottles, which was great. But it also, like, in that moment when you're so vulnerable, it made me feel like, why can't I do this for my kid? And I know it's your kid, right? But like, I'm supposed to be able to feed him myself.
Yeah. And I just took it as it just being what we had to do.
Yeah. And you were like, we're in this together.
I was just thrilled.
We got it. You just wanted to be a part of it.
Because from the get-go, I always wanted to be a dad that did stuff. And that was something I could do.
Yeah. So it's a 0 out of 10 for me.
The only thing that I found that was really not great about it is, and to this day we still do this, and I don't know how necessary it is, and who knows, but we use a sterilizer for everything, so it's fine. We still hand wash all of the kids' bottles, spoons, plates, pretty much any of that kind of stuff. We hand wash. We had to wash that stuff because we only had one set, maybe two.
Maybe.
But we were washing it basically every 3 hours.
Yeah, washing
3 to 6
and
hours.
Sterilizing every 3 hours.
Using,
much, yeah.
Dawn dish soap, hot water, drying it off.
And then sterilizing it.
And it was a lot.
It was.
My hands went super raw. And then we switched over briefly to this like organic, non-toxic dish soap. 7 something or so. I don't remember. Which is all that you can find now at the grocery store. I just want to mention all the cleaners are organic, plant-based things. And that's what it was. It was plant-based.
Yeah.
Figured, fine. It wrecked my hands.
It did.
I broke out like in between my fingers with like hives and rashes. I don't know what was in it, but they were then dry.
You had like a severe allergic reaction to it.
I did. I get weird allergic reaction to things, but that just wrecked my hands, and it took months for that to recover. I feel like,
and
to get the chaff off.
After we stopped, after a while, we were like, okay, we can't use this soap anymore because you're having a reaction. You're probably allergic to something in it. But it did take like at least 2-3 months for your hands to get back to normal.
It got to the point where we were using rubber gloves. I was using what everyone's using now, disposable rubber gloves, and I was washing everything with those just to keep my hands somewhat manageable. So that was really the down part for me personally. But I probably wouldn't give it a 0 out of 10. I would probably say it's more like an 8 out of 10.
An 8 out of 10? Are you out of your mind?
Again,
8 out of 10?
Again, it's not sustainable for what we had to do and the amount of time that we had to do it. An 8 out of 10. If it was longer than that, it probably would be closer to like a 5 or 6 out of 10.
I'm so annoyed you gave it an 8 out of 10.
I know.
I get that you liked it, but postpartum depression is no joke, and I blame my postpartum depression on SNS. So 0 out of 10. 8 out of 10 over here. Are you kidding me? Okay, we need to move on because I'm so mad at your 8 out of 10. Let's move on to bottles.
Yes, bottles.
So same thing with bottles, with SNS, the cleaning the bottles, cleaning the nipples, cleaning the pump parts, sterilizing them. Again, I had read some horror story on either Facebook or Google or something about how I don't even know where it was or how old the baby was or anything, but all I caught from this story was some bacteria grew on the bottle, and then the baby got it, drank out of the bottle, got the bacteria, and got really sick and had to be hospitalized, and it was horrible. And so I became like very obsessive at the beginning about making sure we were washing and sterilizing, and like we were washing everything every 3 hours.
It's amazing we didn't get the baby Breeza then.
I know. We had like the Avent microwavable one, but now we have the baby Breeze, and you can fit more in it, and you just kind of like push the button and you go. And
it dries everything.
And it's great. Dries it, yeah, because then with the Avent one, we would still take it out and dry it. So the baby Breeze is more expensive, but worth it for us because we still use it.
Yeah, it's like 5 times more expensive.
Yeah, but we use it every day, sometimes twice a day, depending on how much we go through. But so that was really the drawback for me for bottles. The benefits, I liked that we both could feed. Like, you got to bond with Owen. I feel like once I stopped trying to breastfeed him, I could bond with him. It was an easier daycare transition because he took a bottle like a champ. It was easier to feed him on the go because, I didn't have to stop and put a nursing cover on or have to deal with people and their opinions about breastfeeding in public.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. If you got to feed your kid in the mall, at Starbucks, at the bank, wherever you are, you go ahead and feed your kid. But I still struggle with that logistically. Like, I'm not great at doing that. And then I don't like the covers. So, like, if I would try to use them, I feel like I'm bad at using the covers to breastfeed.
We also have the world's squirmiest baby.
Yes. But, bottles on the go I thought were really easy.
Mm-hmm.
Owen did take a really long time to eat from a bottle still. He took we also used like the slowest
that
flow
was our
available.
Fault. That was our fault.
I don't know why. We decided one day that he drank too fast, and that was bad.
Mm-hmm.
So we literally got these crazy slow flow nipples.
Well, we backtrack. We did those bags first. Remember?
Yeah. Oh,
the
yeah.
sleeved Playtex bags.
That's right.
Because they vacuumed the air out, so it was harder for the milk to come out. And then we kept him on preemie nipples on the Advent Naturals.
Till he was like 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
He was on preemie nipples.
He still uses them.
Yeah, Owen, he loves a good baba. So usually before bed, we give him a baba. And we've run out of nipples at this point, so we just like use whatever's around.
Mm-hmm.
That's not Emily's bottles. So occasionally he uses like a preemie nipple to drink his milk before bed because it provides him comfort. Yeah, I liked bottles. I didn't like pumping was hard.
Well, and in fairness, we had 2 pumps. We had the Medela Basic, which had to be plugged into the wall.
With insurance.
And then we had their old something Freestyle,
which was cordless,
mm-hmm.
which was nice. Both were nice, but
it was used from a friend.
Yeah, which technically I don't think you're supposed to. Like certain ones, if they're
it's closed system.
Yeah, like a closed system or not. Like if it's not a closed system, you really shouldn't share.
Mm-hmm.
I think technically it wasn't a closed system.
I think it is
the new one is. The new one that I have now. I got the updated Freestyle one for Emily, and that one is closed. I don't know.
But the problem was that it was weak.
It was
the pump
because it had been used before.
Was weak, and it took longer. We now realize that.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't realize it until later on.
So I ended up using the free one from insurance the most because it just had the better suction. But it was pumping's a lot too because you the pump parts, but you feed your kid with a bottle, and then you have to lay them down or set them down and then pump and try to keep them occupied while you're pumping. And then you worry constantly, and maybe it's just me, but I was always like, oh my gosh, I think I pumped more last time. Or I pumped an ounce less. Oh my gosh. Even though I pumped literally 50 to 60 ounces a day, if I pumped an ounce less during a pump session, I would freak out and be like, I'm drying up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like a lot of anxiety around
that. And the sound. That was the other thing.
Drove me nuts.
It did. And you had like PTSD.
Yeah, I have like a physical reaction. Even now, I don't love to pump. I'll do it, but
the new pump is fairly quiet.
It is. It's so quiet. It's so nice.
I mean, it basically sounds like a phone vibrating.
And
it's even quieter than that.
Yeah, but the other one I used definitely had like
It had a noise.
If you've ever had to pump, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and you're like, yes.
Yeah.
It gets in your head, and you're like, I don't want to listen to this anymore.
I think we had you put headphones in.
Yeah, I would put headphones in, and I would like watch shows or try to take my mind off of it. But, when I was home by myself on maternity leave, not that I didn't always have like my mom or your mom coming to visit, but, in the mornings, no one was there at like 7 a.m. Or after you had gone to work. So it was just me listening to it.
Yeah. But for me, I really enjoyed bottles.
Yeah, the bottle piece I really liked. It was the pumping that just was a lot.
The pumping added a lot to our daily routine of cleaning. We had, I want to say, 2 or 3 sets of stuff at any given time. So at the end of the day, there was like 3 sets of things to clean. Just because we had extras from the first one, extras from the free one, extras from a couple of different places.
When I went back to work, I didn't want to have to wash the pump parts in between. Like if I had 2 to 3 sessions that day that I had to do at work, I didn't want to wash the pump parts in between. And I didn't I would do this at home where I would like put them in the fridge in a plastic bag and use them later, but I didn't always want to do that at work because you just don't
fridge?
know who's going in and out. Yeah, it's in our my setup at work was really great. They had like I think they have like 4, depending on what office you're in, but the office I was in at the time, they had like 4 different pumping rooms, and each room would have a little mini fridge. I didn't know how many people were going in and out of the mini fridge and then leaving your stuff there. And anyways, I would bring however many sets of pumping parts for however many sessions I had that day. So there was a lot of wash at the end of the day.
I think we bought some extra ones too, even from the
just
stuff
so
that we
I didn't
inherited
have to
and got
wash
free.
like midday.
Yeah.
It made it more at the end of the day, but
I really enjoyed bottles because a lot of times what our routine was is when at least when I was home, I only took 2 weeks off for Owen. I took all the 10 weeks for Emily. And when I was home, you would pump, I would feed Owen. And so basically whenever I was home, I was the one primarily feeding Owen. I feel like, I don't know if you'd agree to that.
Yeah, you would, because then I would typically pump, and
you'd pump.
I would
while
like
I would
be
feed
there
him.
around you guys.
Yeah, we'd all be in the same room, sitting
yeah.
on the couch or whatever. But I was the one primarily feeding him, holding him, looking at him. So that was really great because I got to be a part of it again. Again, the same thing with the SNS, and I think the same thing with anything. Hand washing anything is just awful.
Yeah.
So that again is not the great part about that. But feeding the bottles, and there was something about when you would feed Owen a bottle that he just would look up at you, and just stare into your eyes, and it was just awesome. And I think that we had a lot of bonding time because of that. Flip to our second kid, that's not the case, and she definitely favors you more.
Yeah.
But Owen favors me more. So I don't know if it's because of the bottle or...
I don't know. Because it's not like I didn't feed Owen with a bottle.
No, and it was only 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Other than that, it was night feedings, and those stopped fairly early on.
Yeah, because you would feed him the bottle. That was nice that you fed him a bottle overnight, and I would pump. So we would get done around the same time. Because at night we started to just use a regular bottle, not the slow flow ones. And so he would drink it in like 7 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, and that's something to bring up too. So he was drinking... I can't remember how fast he drank it. For a while, it was hard to get under 10 minutes. It was always over 10 minutes. And again, that's really difficult because of cleaning, going back to sleep, feeding every 3 hours. It's a lot when it's 15, 17 minutes. I think maybe 20 minutes was the average at one point in time. And then all of a sudden it went down to like 10 or under 10. And we panicked.
Like 7 minutes.
Yeah, it's 7 minutes. You're right. It was 7 minutes, and we panicked. We thought he's eating too much,
or too fast.
Too fast. And we were worried about him. I don't know, vomiting, or I think he did it once. Maybe once he got an upset stomach, or he got really, really touchy,
like
whiny, gassy.
Like whiny, yeah.
He doesn't have a gag reflex. He's thrown up 3 times in his entire life.
As a baby, he literally only spit up 3 times. It was odd how little he spit up.
Even to this day, he really doesn't.
Only if he's
up.
super, super sick.
Or eats 2 bananas in a row.
Yeah. That one day he ate 2 bananas so fast and they threw it all up.
Emily, on the other hand, throws up multiple times a day. It's a thing.
Yeah. Not throws up. Spits up.
Spits up.
Yeah. She doesn't
spits up.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it is. I don't know what it was that
I also don't know why. Thinking back to it, I don't know why we panicked so much. He
Stupid
drank
new
like
parents.
3 minutes faster overnight. He was probably like, "I'm just looking out for you, Mom and Dad. You guys look tired."
Yeah, we finally changed to a 1 nipple when his face started to turn bright red because he was sucking so hard on the 0 nipple that we were like, we should probably change it to a 1. And I think we went up to a 3 pretty quick. It went from 1. We skipped 2. We skipped 2.
We got 2s, but we didn't use them very long.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were like, I think he should have moved up a lot sooner.
We never made it past 3, though.
No, we didn't.
I didn't even know there was a 4. up until we had Emily.
Yeah. That's so funny.
So I really like bottles. It gave me a really good chance to bond with Owen.
And we always knew how much he was getting, which
that's a really good point
liked.
too.
And I think
everything was regimented.
Yeah, we used some formula that's like take how much he weighs, times it by 16 or 8 or something.
You used to have that down pat.
Yeah, and then divide it by the number of feedings they're going to have in the day, and that's how much you give them. And I liked knowing how much he got. He very rarely did not finish the bottle.
No.
So it wasn't like, oh, we're, wasting all this milk or whatever. He typically ate everything we gave him, and we knew that we knew how much he was getting. And even I think at one point he was at maybe for like a month, he was at like 32 to 36 ounces a day. So we were like, he's definitely getting enough. His weight was fine. When you look at the growth charts, every time you go to the pediatrician, everything looked good. So we were like, all right, this is great. And he was so regimented. He never cluster fed as a baby. I was shocked when our daughter cluster fed for the first 3 months of her life every night, because Owen didn't cluster feed. And I don't know if that's because he was bottle fed or if he just wasn't a cluster feeding baby. But
it was all regimented. It always was. That was one thing that took the stress away from bottle feeding.
He got on a schedule so fast.
He was on a schedule. He was never off more than maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah.
We always knew exactly how much he ate on a daily basis. We never had to worry about that. That was never in question. And we also would know if he wasn't feeling good because obviously he wouldn't eat as much. And he got sick a couple of times.
When he went to daycare, for the first time, he got sick.
Yeah.
As most kids do.
Yeah.
Exposure to germs.
And to me, bottle feeding was, again, other than the washing stuff, was super easy. Again, the transition to daycare was super easy.
I was going to say the transition to regular milk. It was easy, but the transition to sippy cups, he obviously drinks out of a sippy cup, but as I said earlier, he gets like a comfort out of drinking out of what he calls and we call his baba. So he does still like occasionally take like a baba, but I mean, he can drink out of a cup. He uses a sippy cup, but he is like pretty attached to it.
Yeah, it's a problem.
So there's that.
There's the small thing of weaning him off that. Yes.
That. We still give him a baba every night before bed.
And in the morning.
And he's 2, but it's fine. Yeah, and in the morning, he usually gets one. But at lunch and dinner, he gets a cup.
But he's always drinking milk. Again, the formula was easy when we switched over to formula off breast milk.
Yeah, he never skipped a beat with that.
Going from whole milk to 2% and 2% to 1%. He flinched a little bit at that, but overall he still drank all his babas and he still drinks the 1% now. And the great part about the 1% is he can have as much as he wants, so he drinks it all the time.
He doesn't like it as much. He prefers water with lunch and dinner typically now, but that's like a new thing as of like 2 weeks ago. Yeah,
well, he enjoyed the whole milk much more.
He did, yeah.
And I didn't realize until we had kids that 1% milk or skim milk, which is what we were brought up on, is like really nasty and watered down.
Skim milk is so watery
compared to like
even
definitely
1%
whole milk
or 2%.
But 2%, I didn't realize it. Like 2% is awesome.
Yeah,
it's almost creamy compared to the
skim
watery
milk,
skim
which
milk.
is just water basically.
It's got to be
so
like
sad.
a third water. It's disgusting.
Anyways, so what would you rate bottle out of 10?
10.
I'm gonna say
9.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna say 8 or 9 out of 10. I like bottle feeding. I don't like pumping. So bottle feeding I like a lot. Pumping still is like a little bit of a trigger.
But you could do formula, milk.
Yeah, formula.
It doesn't have to be breast milk.
It doesn't have to be breast milk. I feel like to a certain extent I like put myself in this situation where I tend to feel guilty very quickly for things and like hold it instead of just being like, this is affecting my mental health. I should probably just like give him formula and call it end of the day and like give him a cuddle and a hug instead of like crying in a corner about how much I hate pumping, but I feel like a bad mom if I stop pumping him breast milk because that's what's best for him.
Yeah, but I mean, other than potentially antibodies, the breast milk is going to be the same as formula.
Yeah. I think it's just,
I know.
You just feel that as a mom where you're like, this is supposed to be what's best for him.
Mm-hmm.
But looking back, I think I should have stopped pumping sooner. I mean, I can't go back and change anything, but I remember when we got pregnant with Emily, I went into that appointment with the nurse practitioner where you have to do it every time, regardless of how many kids you have. You go to your nurse practitioner or your OB and you talk through like, hey, here's what you can eat. Here's what you don't eat. Kind of like, here's what's going to happen during the pregnancy and your appointments and yada, yada, yada. And she was like, what did you do with Owen? How did you feed him? And I immediately started crying when she asked me. And she was like, are you okay? And I was like, well, he wouldn't latch and I had to pump and bottle feed him. And I'm pretty sure that pumping's a trigger for me. And she was like, okay, you do know you don't have to do that, right? And formula's fine. And I was like, I know that's okay, but my mind won't let me think it's okay. So if you are feeling anything like that currently, I just want to tell you, it's okay to feed your kids formula. I was mostly fed on formula. You were fully formula fed, and
I was
awesome.
adopted.
Yeah.
I had to be on formula.
Yeah, so.
And the formula today's got to be better than what we were fed.
Yeah. So formula, breast milk, do what you got to do. You're feeding your kid, and that's what counts.
Yeah, and all the stuff about formula being bad and all that it's so outdated, and it just isn't true.
Yeah, like is breast milk probably the best? Yes. But is formula like a super, super like second, like very high second place? Yeah.
They're essentially the same place.
Yeah, they are. So you do you, moms and dads out there.
Mm-hmm. So what does that leave? Breastfeeding. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think that tells you how Dave feels about breastfeeding.
Meh.
So you're not the biggest fan of it.
I am not the biggest fan of breastfeeding. The only benefit to breastfeeding, and I say only because it's not even 100% true, is there's a mild less amount of bottles to be washed or pump parts. Because here's the thing. Even if you're breastfeeding, you still have to pump when they're at daycare. So there's still pump parts to wash. So in the end, it's a little bit less of washing, but we're still washing and pumping. So
yeah. I think breastfeeding is a lot easier when they're younger.
When they can't squirm away.
Yeah. So it was really easy to feed Emily up until about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
I used my boppy. I love my boppy. I still use it when I can, when she's not squirming around to this day. But, she was just cool to chill in it.
On a side note, used boppies are not great because used boppies get flat after the second child or first child.
Got a boppy for our baby shower with Owen, and then my sister gave us like a hand-me-down boppy, and
it was super flat when we got it.
It was flatter, and then with our boppy now that we got for our baby shower, now it's like flat, like our hand-me-down one was, and it just
fun trick though.
So
if
sad.
You throw it in the washer and then you dry it,
it comes back to life for a little bit.
It comes back to life a little bit. It's kind of like fluffing your pillow at night.
Yeah.
It doesn't last, but it
doesn't
puffs
last
it up
as
just a
long,
little
but
bit.
There's probably so many people that are like, duh, guys, just throw it in the wash and dry it real quick.
Surprisingly enough, we didn't wash it with Owen.
Well, we washed the cover.
Yeah, we didn't wash the
actual
pillow. Because normally when you put pillows in the wash, they get lumpy.
Yeah.
And that's what I assumed would happen with something like that. But apparently that's whatever material that it's made out of, it doesn't do that. So, if you want to get some life out of your boppy again, wash it.
In the washer dryer, yeah. back to breastfeeding.
Yeah.
I bonded a lot quicker with Emily.
You did. Mm-hmm.
I am her favorite.
You are.
Cluster feeding was easier.
Well, we had nothing to compare it to. We had no
Yes.
cluster feeding.
Because at least what I imagine cluster feeding with a bottle is.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that if Owen were to have cluster fed a lot, it could potentially have been really frustrating that it was like, well, he only drank an ounce and I put 3 in there. Can we save it? We should really throw it out. But with her, it was just like, okay, you popping on the boob, you popping off the boob. Okay, now you're coming back on, you're coming back off. Was it super frustrating and lead to a lot of lack of sleep? Yes.
For you.
But the actual process of
Mm-hmm.
having to do it, like I didn't have to prepare a bottle and hope she drank it all.
That's a very good
point. It was
point.
just off and on as she pleased.
That's a very good point.
So that I liked better.
Well, and that's something to mention too.
Mhm.
2 things actually. One, I didn't have to get up for any of those cluster feedings. Very few of them. I think I got up for a couple, but I was really on Owen duty at that point.
Yeah.
So he was still waking up some points in the night. So I would
Not
get
often. Don't use that as an excuse, sir. Owen is a great sleeper.
He is a great sleeper.
And rarely wakes up.
The only times he wakes up is when he can't find a passy.
Yeah.
Which we used to have glow in the dark ones, but those all got bitten through. And,
He bit through them.
Mm-hmm. He's bitten through basically every single one he has. We're on the bare bones now.
Yeah.
Or the soothers. The soothers. For some reason, they're, I don't know, he doesn't seem to bite through those.
Yeah.
Those green ones that you get from the hospital, or
You
they're
can't bite
attached
through
to the
them,
little stuffed animals. So yeah, I got up every time that there was a feeding at night.
With Owen.
With Owen. Becky would pump. I would feed him a bottle or whatever it might be, or help her set up the SNS,
Mm-hmm.
you know, whatever it might be. For Emily, because she kind of had it all with her, I slept through it.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that would be a pro for me.
Pro for you. I
Yeah.
did have that on, like, it was all on me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was like a little bit. Like,
well, and even if I had gotten up to do something, there's nothing I could have done.
You could have, like, I think there were a couple times when I made you get up and rub my back. And I was like, can you just sit up and rub my back while I feed her? Because
Which works for me because it puts me to sleep.
it puts you to sleep, yeah. But she cluster fed so much for the first, like, really 2.5 months that I would stay downstairs with her in the family room she would start cluster feeding at like 8, and then she wouldn't be done till like 12 or midnight. And it was like either every hour or every half hour. So I would just stay downstairs and then come up. A lot of nights I just slept on the couch and she slept in the portable bassinet.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally at like 2.5, 3 months, I was like, I'm sleeping in my own bed. Like, we're going to figure this out. And that's when she started to sleep through the night. So I was like, should have brought her up sooner.
Maybe a coincidence, maybe not.
Yeah. But yeah, initially less, because I was on maternity leave for 4 months, really. There was a lot less washing and sanitizing because I was able to just feed every meal. And then we would, like I mentioned before, we did try to introduce a bottle to her initially. And so one feed a day, you would try to bottle feed her. But even then, she wouldn't get very much. She wouldn't take it. And then we kind of gave up and we were like, since I'm home for 4 months, I might as well just breastfeed her because that's easier. And then I don't have to pump. I didn't like, as you guys all know, I don't like pumping. And then we didn't have to wash the extra pump parts and bottle. And then she went to daycare and we were like, sorry, daycare, she doesn't really take a bottle.
Yeah.
And that's when we got back into, obviously, knee pumping and working with her more.
And we're in a pretty good place now with it. We just got to
Yeah.
get daycare on board.
Yeah. I also, one of the drawbacks, at least for me with breastfeeding, I had more clogged ducts and actually mastitis a few weeks ago with breastfeeding. So I had a couple clogged ducts pumping.
But you always worked them out.
Yeah, it never turned into mastitis. I never got aches or chills when I pumped. And I think because I was removing so much from my breast each pump that I just didn't have that problem. But I've had probably 3 clogged ducts and mastitis at least once. I actually think I probably had it another time because I've had like the aches and fevers.
It was
a couple
bad.
times. When This last time was pretty bad. I felt like I had the flu.
And it happened right around when you got your COVID shot.
Yeah, it happened the week where I was getting my second COVID shot.
So the one that kind of knocks you out
Yeah, the
a
one
little.
that makes you not feel so great for a lot of people. So
Mhm.
I was like, great. Actually, the second COVID shot was nothing compared to mastitis. So I was like, this is fine. I feel I'm a little achy, but this is great compared to earlier this week. So I don't know if there's any connection between breastfeeding and more mastitis versus pumping and having less. I'm sure that like some people could have the complete opposite experience, but just for me, I've had more.
It started to be
issues with
more of
that.
the clogs started to be more an issue when she started to get distracted more.
Yeah.
So she would feed, pull off, feed, pull off, feed, pull off multiple times within a feeding, where previously she was just always on and then maybe pulled off once or twice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she pulls off now all the time because she's so
distracted.
distracted.
And she's so wiggly. And I can't just like hold her on my lap and feed her. I have to like lay on my side or lay back and have her lay on her stomach. And
Because she wants to be upright when she feeds.
yeah, she's all over the place now.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you rate? But overall, I've really liked breastfeeding up until the last like month or so. And that's not to say I don't like it. It's just gotten harder because she's so distracted.
Well, and you're also like probably mentally, we're a month past when you wanted to quit.
Yeah. So we're like with Emily, I was like, all right, I'll she's breastfeeding. Cool. I'll do 6 months like I did with Owen. And then I'll stop.
And then she didn't take a bottle.
And then she didn't take a bottle. And then I felt like trapped in it. And I was like, and it's not like I sit there and I breastfeed and I'm like, oh my gosh, I hate this. I really don't mind it. I just kind of would prefer to just like bottle feed her now.
Mm-hmm. It would make things a little simpler.
Well, it's great to hear you say that. Let's go. Let's do bottle feeding. Let's go that route.
I'm fine with that.
So what would you rate breastfeeding out of 10?
I probably would rate it a 7.
Okay. I would probably do like an 8.5, 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
You rated SNS 8 out of 10. So
Yeah. The only reason why I rated the breast a little higher is because it was better for you. So I was trying to think
So for you, what would you rate breastfeeding out of 10?
Oh, like a 3 or 4.
Okay. Interesting. I honestly did not realize it was that low for you. I should have weaned long ago.
Well, I feel like I didn't get an opportunity to bond with her the way I got to bond with Owen.
Yeah.
And I realized that it all come from circle when Owen prefers mommy and Emmy prefers daddy. But
yeah,
right now, it would have been great to have them both really like me.
Okay.
I'm selfish.
Yeah, so I mentioned my theory before.
Yeah, what's your theory?
My theory is, or my personal opinion, from 0 to 6 months breastfeeding, 6 months and older bottle feeding is the way to go.
But you have to start at like 5 months then, making sure they can take a bottle. If your plan is to eject at 6 months.
Yeah, but like in an ideal state, you could just breastfeed and like bottle feed whenever you wanted.
Perfect world.
Yeah, perfect world.
Okay.
And then at 6 months, they just perfectly take a bottle and you can, just transition over. I think it's easier when they're so little and they're cluster feeding and, you don't have to get up in the middle of the night to bring pump parts downstairs to the wash bin.
That's a good point too. Warming bottles.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Owen would scream and Owen would wake. So when Owen woke up for his bottle in the middle of the night when he was like a newborn baby, he would scream bloody murder. And Dave probably doesn't remember this
I don't
as
remember
much
it.
because he would go down and heat the bottle up and I would sit in the room with screaming Owen.
And it was a minimum 8 minutes to get it up to temperature in the little bottle warmer. We have an Advent bottle warmer. Like this is the only thing this thing's supposed to do. The problem is that And we've later found out the easier way to warm milk is in a bag in the sink with hot water. the problem is that the heat transfer doesn't happen to the milk as fast as it should because of the thickness of the bottle.
Mm-hmm.
So the heat in the water has to transfer. Well, the heat from the plate has to transfer to the water. Then the heat from the water has to transfer through the bottle, then through the milk. It takes like 8 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So
which
he
doesn't
screams
seem like
8 to
that
10 minutes long.
In like the daytime, or
Mhm.
but like if you're like, oh, okay, it takes 8 minutes to heat up the bottle, no big deal. But when he's screaming bloody murder in the middle of the night,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, just bring up the damn bottle already.
But he liked it warm.
He did like it warm, but. So, yes, in my perfect world, I think breastfeeding is much easier the first 6 months because you can feed on demand whenever they're hungry. And we had talked before, we liked knowing how much he got. My mom actually got us like a baby scale. So that way, in between my pediatrician's appointments, because I'm kind of crazy and have a lot of anxiety, I could weigh her and make sure she was on track and not like dipping in weight.
And we know that's not scientifically accurate, but it was a decent way of tracking how much she ate.
Yeah, so I would do weighted feeds occasionally. And then I would also just like weigh her every once in a while to make sure she wasn't like 5 pounds less than the day before.
Which, funny story on that, you have to use that on a hard surface, not on carpet.
Yeah, otherwise she will be 5 pounds less than the day before, and you will freak out thinking your baby just lost 5 pounds in a day.
But that did work. It did work. The weighing.
The weighted feeds and
Yeah.
just weighing. Yeah, it gave me peace of mind.
That was another thing that was hard with breastfeeding, and I forgot to mention it. You have no idea, especially us coming from such a regimented schedule with Owen,
Yeah.
you have no idea how much the baby's eating.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't.
Yeah, and that's why it did help to have that scale, because we would be like,
Well, we
okay,
remember to
all
use
week
it.
she's been 11 pounds. I used it. I didn't do weighted feeds every time, but like
Yeah.
I would weigh her like every couple days just to make sure she wasn't losing weight.
Right.
And that helped. I thought that was a good idea on my mom's part to get that, just because she knew I wanted to try breastfeeding again. But that was one of my biggest drawbacks, was like, what if I don't know if she's going to be getting enough,
Mm-hmm.
especially coming from full bottle feeding.
Mm.
But then I think after 6 months, for me personally, I think bottle feeding is easier. That's my opinion
I think bottle feeding's easier.
altogether.
Yeah. The only thing that I regret is the passy. Which has nothing to do with
Owen
this.
might have a pacifier addiction and a bottle addiction. But, you pick your battles.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He sleeps through the night great. So
He sleeps through the
and
night.
has since we sleep trained him at like 8 months.
Mm-hmm. Another podcast for that.
Yeah. So every kid's got their thing. He just he likes his comforts.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I think overall I vote bottle. You
I
do
would-
a little both.
0 to 6 months breastfeeding,
Mhm.
6+ bottle feeding for me.
Fair enough.
So let's get this little girl onto the bottle.
Hey, she's taking bottles. We just have
She
to
is.
give
She
them to
takes
her
the
more.
bottle great, and I'm worried about weaning only because I've had mastitis and several clogged milk ducts. So I know I can't just be like, I'm done tomorrow. It's gonna be a process.
No, and we need
so.
to keep giving her breast milk anyways, because she can definitely tell the difference between breast milk and formula.
Yeah, we have to start like
mixing.
putting like a little bit in and
Mhm.
then mixing it in more and more. Also, because we mentioned I got my second COVID vaccine, so
Mhm.
I think this weekend I'm fully vaccinated and past that like grace period, the 2 weeks after you get it.
Yeah, 14 days.
Yeah, but I'm also hoping she's getting antibodies.
Mm-hmm.
I plan on sneaking some breast milk to Owen.
He doesn't love breast milk.
He doesn't.
Not anymore.
He has stolen a couple of Emily's bottles and drank them, and he does not like breast milk anymore. But I'm going to try to mix it with like maybe regular milk just to see if maybe he gets some antibodies.
I think his words exactly were yucky.
Yeah, yucky. I'll just put some chocolate in it and tell them it's chocolate milk.
There you go.
Yeah. But there you go. Giving my kids some, hopefully, COVID antibodies.
Can't hurt.
Yeah. Anyways, that is our experience with bottled breast and SNS.
And formula.
And formula. Because formula is A-OK in our book.
Exactly.
Yes.
So write to us at spillproofpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook and wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. We'd love to hear your stories on this. So again, reach out to us. We'd love to see your emails. Obviously, YouTube as well. Write in the comments.
And if you did SNS for more than 2 weeks, let me know because I'm going to send you a pie, a key lime pie.
Might be a little thawed.
It'll be a Marie Callender's key lime pie, so hopefully you live nearby.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.